Hello, everybody. Hope you well. Hope you're fantastic. My name is Gavin Mkabela. I hope that you are fantastic and incredible wherever that you may be. Now, I just wanted to talk about trust just a little bit. Now, I engage a lot with people that want to invest in property. And of course, through that whole process, we talk about how to structure the deals. And obviously that pertains to how, which entity you use to buy the properties. Do you buy the properties in your name? Do you buy the properties in a company? Do you buy the properties in a trust? What kind of vehicle will then be effective, to then build your property portfolio. But of course, this is dependent on what your objective is. And with that, will then go into the strategy that you will then use. Now, of course, one of the entities, as I mentioned, that you can use is trust. Now, a lot of the times people ask me, what are trusts, Get? Is the trust, like, how does it work? Now, normally when we talk about now property, the number one trust that we talk about is the inter-vivos trust. So this is the one that you actually register, right? And then we call it, there's AKA a living trust. So it pretty much works, while you're alive, but it also works as well for when you have passed on. So when you now, leaving all of these properties, not even just properties, but assets to your kids or your beneficiaries, so to speak. Now, so a lot of people will ask, but what is this trust? Like, how does it work? So I just want to explain it in a very weird way. Like it is a weird, like this is a weird example that I normally use, but I realize that people catch it on, like they catch it all the time, like they remember it as I say it. So I normally make an example of I know this is gonna sound crazy, but unfortunately that's how I explain it, and it makes sense, right? So think about in South Africa, I don't know where you are in the world watching this video, but in South Africa we have this thing called Tokoloshi. So Tokoloshi is, it's something that is sort of attached to the whole concept of witchcraft, so to speak, right? So Tokoloshi is this little man that is supposed to, you control it. So when you have this Tokoloshi, you control this thing, and you can send it anywhere to cause havoc. So if there's somebody that you don't like, you send this Tokoloshi to cause harm to the person, so to speak. So I've never seen a Tokoloshi before. I don't know how it looks like, but it's something that we grew up hearing about Tokoloshi. So when you say Tokoloshi in South Africa, people will identify a lot of the times to say, oh, the little man, and it's not a good thing. So I normally make this example. So imagine now you have this little man. So this little man is your instrument, it's your weapon to go if people are giving you problems, and you can send this Tokoloshi and it can cause issues, so to speak. So it's sort of like an invincible but visible something like that, but it's there. So as I said, I've never seen it before, so I don't know exactly how it looks like and all of this. So there's been stories and books written around Tokoloshi, so everybody comes up with a certain way how it looks and all of that. So yeah, so imagine now it's your house and it's your neighbor's house. All right, so your neighbor, so maybe you and your neighbors, you don't get along, and you just feel it, I have a Tokoloshi, and let me send this Tokoloshi next door. It must cause problems there, right? So now you send now this Tokoloshi. So let's call this Tokoloshi John. So John Tokoloshi is that's your thing that you can send now. You say, John, go next door, show them some flames, right? So obviously, John is your Tokoloshi and he listens to what you say. So John will go next door and do funny things there. So let's say now next door they are also strong, so you can't really just hoy a witchcraft on them, and then just things just happen. Maybe let's say that they actually just catch John, which is the Tokoloshi, and now they obviously they think you and and then you have a good relationship, and then they call you. They don't know about who sent this Togolosh. They call you. It's like, yo, Gavin, my neighbor, please come and just come and see what we have found, right? So now I know that this is the Togolosh that they found. This is my Togolosh they found. So now I'm going to next door. So when I'm going to next door, I'm busy now going, John, you don't know me, right? So my Togolosh, you don't know me. And I get next door, and of course John won't know me because John listens to what I say, right? So pretty much that's what the trust does. I know, as I said, it's a very, very weird example, but somehow people remember it. So now that's how the trust works, according to me. So the trust is when things are bad. So for example, you get into trouble and people want to attach your stuff or your properties or your assets, the trust then acts as an incubator for those assets or those properties. So it pretty much protects them. And then why, a lot of the times it protects is because a trust is independent from you. So that is an amazing thing that the trust does. It's independent from Gavin. So it has its own legal standing. It has its own identity. So whatever that lies in the trust belongs to the trust, right? So as Gavin, I will obviously register this trust. So I control what's in the trust, right, for the benefit of the beneficiaries. But of course, I don't own this thing. They are not mine. So if you come and say, Gavin, and you have so many properties, these are your properties in the trust. They're not my properties. They belong to the trust, right? So that is why when I make the example of the Togolosh is that, when things are bad, Togolosh doesn't know you because you say you don't know me, right? So when people come and like, look, we want to attach your stuff, these are not my things, they belong to the trust. But of course, I then have the full access in terms of controlling what's going on in the trust. So that is pretty much what a trust does. And I think a lot of the times we don't get proper explanations around these vehicles, or it's just a matter of also the exposure aspect of it, right? Because if you check in terms of when you talk up to a lot of people, you talk about the trust, a lot of people will say, yo, trust, no, hey, it's for rich people, it's for people who have money, it's for, it's just not for us, basically. But when you start to dig deep and understand the role that the trust does, just like the role, understanding what the role of a company does, you start to understand how all of these things interlink. And it's very imperative to understand all of these things because these are wealth languages. A lot of the times you have people that, we are so stuck. We're so stuck. We might be rich, but they're not wealthy because we don't understand the language. We don't understand, the vehicles that we can use. And I really believe that a lot of, our narratives around, building stuff, acquiring things, and not preserving them, not passing them on to the next generation is precisely on the basis that we don't know the instruments that are there, the vehicles that are there, that are effective, that are are geared towards the aspects of now putting together these assets when we are accumulating them, preserving them, and then be able to use that vehicle to pass them on to the next generation. Because that's the big thing around it. I think a lot of us, where we come from, there is not a big problem, like a huge, like 100% problem of acquiring things. We can acquire things, but I think the big problem is the preservation. And then from that preservation is then how then do you pass them on to the next generation. So I think that's where the big problem is it really for me lies in these three entities, which are also sort of a foundation of what we're trying to establish, especially when we talk about generational wealth. Because when you start to understand firstly the issue of tax, when you start to understand the issue of how do I protect my stuff against my creditors, and then be able to understand what happens when Gavin passes away, so those are the things that we start need to interrogate and understand. Because when we start to understand them, that's where we're going to start to see a shift in the way, first of all, we accumulate wealth. Not even before we accumulate, how we define English, and how we accumulate it, how we preserve it, and how we transfer it, right? So those are the 4 things that we really need to work on to say, how do we define wealth, how do we accumulate wealth, how do we preserve wealth, and how do we transfer wealth? Because we cannot talk about generational wealth if we can't talk about these 4 things, these 4 processes. We can't, because how then do we transfer something that you don't understand, that you don't know? How do you preserve it? How then, you can't. So we need to be able to understand what constitutes wealth. But obviously that is a story for another day. I just wanted to touch on really around the issue of trust. So this it's called inter vivos trust. So that's the one that houses, so to speak, your assets. There's another one, there's a number of names, but there's the major ones that we normally talk about is this one, inter vivos trust. So this is for your assets. And then you have the testamentary trust. So this is the one that is attached to your will. So that is also very important that you get in touch with people like your financial advisors, people like your accountants, people like your attorneys, so that they can be able to package and customize things in a way that it will be suited for you and your family. So we need to understand this language. We need to understand these concepts, because that's where we start to do differently. So anyway, I didn't want to take too much of the time. Just wanted to explain the trust, the inter vivos trust, aka Togolosh, in a sense, but I hope that you know what I mean. I hope this will definitely assist you in just having a better understanding of what trust are all about. As I say, please make sure that you consult your financial advisors, your accountants, attorneys, and all the people that really are working around this wealth management space, so that they can be able to explain it even much more in detail, and then be able to customize all this according to your and your family needs. Anyway, Gavin Kabela, see you on the flip side.